Welcome everyone to Trend Talks Life. I'm your host, Erin Tomie, and today we're talking to Trend Micro Director, Forward-Looking Threat Research, Robert McArdle. Robert, how are you doing today?
Very good. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. Very happy to have you here on Trend Talks Life. I would love to just start with you sharing a bit about your role here at Trend Micro.
Absolutely. So I manage two teams within Trend Micro. The first is a team called the Forward-Looking Threat Research Team, or FTR for short. And they're essentially the scouts for Trend Micro. So they look at the next 1 to 3 years of where we think technology is evolving, kind of social use of the internet, and then of course cybercrime itself, which will evolve alongside both of those. And that's also the same team that is responsible for any law enforcement collaboration. And then the second team is one called Adversary Intelligence and Monitoring. And those are based on tracking today's criminals, figuring out what they're doing, and using that intelligence to then inform our protections and solutions.
AI usage has been exploding in all areas of our life, especially in tech. I would assume that there is also a big push in the cybercriminal world also to adopt it.
So we would have assumed the same as well starting out. I mean, when you look at our own tech industry and when you look at other parts of the industry, like the medical industry, everywhere else, AI is exploding in usage, especially LLMs like ChatGPT and so on, usage like that. And it's been a real productivity boost to many industries. So on the criminal side, we would have expected a kind of explosion of like laser targeted phishing attacks, massive scaling up of operations and processing data dumps at scale and deepfakes and so on. But in reality, for financial criminals, they've mostly been fairly minor changes. So developers of malware would of course use AI to help them develop their code, just like every programmer on the planet right now. There's a bit of use of LLMs for better translation, maybe of phishing emails and stuff like that. And there has been some kind of limited use of deepfakes from a malicious point of view. And the key reason behind that is that criminals don't behave like normal technical researchers or people in the technical industry. The very essence of being a criminal is that you do it because it's easier than the alternative in the real world. So there's kind of three rules of cybercrime I've noticed over the years. The first is criminals want an easy life. That's the entire point of being a criminal, is that you get paid more than you would in a real job for doing less work. The second thing is that any new super cool trend that comes along, the return of investment has to be significantly better than whatever it is you're doing right now. So if it's ransomware or something else, if the new thing doesn't make you more money than that, why bother, right? It's just a waste of your time and energy. And then the third part is that while in the tech industry, we see these revolutionary changes from time to time, like AI or blockchain or things like that, in the criminal world, it tends to be, it's evolution, not revolution. So it's small optimizations of kind of what they've been doing over time that they go for, rather than risking it all on some big thing that may or may not actually pay off.
I really love those three rules of being a cyber criminal you listed at the end there. I think that gives a really good picture. And if they are slow to adapt with these new and exciting things that happen in the technology industry, what are some big trends that you've observed in cyber criminal behavior recently, and how are they impacting the organizations that we would work with Trend?
Yeah, so this is a point in some interviews where it's kind of boring, because it's the same thing that we would have said last year or the year before, because it doesn't evolve terribly quickly, right? So the top one is still probably ransomware, right? It's incredibly profitable. Even with the major takedowns, like recently Trend Micro helped with the takedown of Lockbit, which was by far the biggest ransomware. Recently Black Cat, another major one, actually did essentially what's called an exit scam. They took the money and ran. So while there's those changes happening, the business model of ransomware is not going away anywhere. It's just far, far too profitable. Also, you see some other like top tier malware like business email compromise, or BEC as it's called. That's less talked about, but it's actually arguably more profitable than ransomware is. And it's probably more set up to be helped by AI, because you can have very realistic targeted emails and things along those lines. And then what's interesting with cybercrime is there's multiple tiers. So you've got this top tier, if you like, You then have a mid-tier where you have things like phishing as a service. We just recently we helped shut down LabHost, a major phishing as a service provider. And then you have credit card fraud, you have stealers for stealing logins and passwords, coin miners, and a whole bunch of other things. And if you think about it, it's a bit like the tech industry. So within the tech industry, there is these giants that everybody talks about, the Googles, Facebooks, and so on. And then there's a huge amount of smaller companies that they don't make the media, they don't get on people's radar because they're not household names, but they actually make quite a lot of money collectively. And that's essentially how cybercrime works as well. So the difference is that cybercrime doesn't quite evolve as quickly as our tech industry does, because it doesn't have to for those kind of 3 rules we mentioned earlier. And crime has always been like that. Crime has never kept pace with society fully because they don't have to. They're always lag behind. And it's a bit like how in the natural world, parasites evolve slower than the hosts actually do because they don't have to. They simply have all the resources they need. So why bother putting the energy in when you're making millions every month anyhow?
Switching gears a little bit, I've spoken previously on Trend Talks Life with Paul Pajares about Trend's involvement with Interpol. I know we work with many governments and law enforcement agencies around the world. Why do we need governments and private industry collaborating in the cybersecurity world?
Sure. So first of all, shout out to Paul. Great person. I'm delighted we have him on the team here in Trend. Secondly then, so there's a couple of reasons. So cybercrime is a very unique crime in that from a law enforcement point of view, we actually have the evidence of the crime. They only have some of it. So if you go to a traditional crime scene, there's a body and you draw a chalk drawing around it. Actually, I don't know if they do that, but we assume they do. And then they've got the murder weapon and the blood and everything else. When you go to a cybercrime scene, they might have some of the evidence on the victim's computers, but a lot of it sits in like security software logs or server logs and things around the world. So law enforcement actually have to partner with private industry to have an overall picture of the crime. The other thing is it's global in scale. So that one victim you have in your jurisdiction as a law enforcement is just one of thousands quite often. And having the bigger picture, you need to see the global view, which somebody like Trend can provide. The second reason then is we tend to have the expertise in-house in security companies that law enforcement may not have. So deep technical expertise like reverse engineers, forensics people, threat intelligence experts. Traditional law enforcement would come through learning law enforcement and then maybe some computer skills on top, or the other way around, computer science and then learning investigation skills. So having those deep experts they can tap into is critically important. And then probably most important, and this is something quite unique to Trend, is that within a Trend itself, we have the culture and mission and in fact common belief that the overall driving goal of Trend in our mission statement is to make the world safe for the exchange of digital information. So not just our customers' information, anybody's. And that 100% aligns to any law enforcement in the world because that's what they're trying to do as well on the cyber side. You should be able to go on the internet the same way you walk down a street and you don't get mugged when you walk down the nice streets in the city. Of course, if you go to the dodgy areas, there's always going to be risk. But we should limit that as much as possible so that you can generally be safe online when you shop and interact with your friends and everything along those lines. So over 20 years or so now of working with law enforcement, we've established a lot of trust with them. I'd say we're probably one of the most trusted partners of law enforcement globally at this point.
Robert, I feel like we could talk all day and I could ask you a million more questions on this topic, but I know that you are a busy trender, so I will let you go and we can talk again some other time. But thank you again for joining me on Trend Talks Life today, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.
Anytime, Erin. Pleasure.